Now it is more clear.
Okay. Okay. Is this better?
Yes, yes.
Oh, that's great, sir.
Meeting is live now. You can start. We are live now. We can start.
Okay, okay.
Very good evening, my dear viewers, those who are watching our, this Education Pe Charcha. I greet all of you from across India and those who are connected with our very unique and spectacular bandwagon of Education Pe Charcha, even from across the world. I greet all of you on this 47th session of Education Pe Charcha. My dear viewer, this is Vivekananda, an author, academician, and a public intellectual, of course, convener of Education Pe Charcha. This particular unique program is being conducted under the aegis of Professor Surendra Pathak, who happens to be an adjunct professor of, Mahatma Gandhi University in Gandhinagar. And of course, with the technical assistance rendered by Sabya Pathak, and poster prepared by Chandan Odom. My dear viewers, today we have a very, very special guest because the man I came to know from different sources, is a self-made man. And of course, he epitomizes the versatility in himself. And, we just need to have little more details about Professor, our very, very esteemed guest today, that is Professor Nand Kishore Shah. He was the former Vice Chancellor of the Veer Singh University, Ara, Bihar, Pro-Vice Chancellor of the same university, Head Professor and Head of the Department, Postgraduate Education and Research Department of Botany, TNB College, Bhagalpur, and he had done Post-Doctoral Research Fellow, Department of Experimental Radiation and Oncology, University of Texas, that is, the MD Anderson Cancer Center, Houston, Texas. So, my dear viewers, he has got, his profile is really oceanic. In as much as it represents the vastness, the oceanic depth of his persona. So therefore, without wasting much of time, because if I go on sharing all his meticulous details that I do have in my possession, possibly it would exhaust all of the time. So it is the very, very opportune time that we instantly kickstart our very, very unique and spectacular session, because all of you would definitely agree that Education Pe Charcha is equivalent to educating the nation. So today we are going to have a very, very, very detailed and comprehensive discussion in the area of botany, in the area of medical science, and most importantly, in the area of advanced physics. So you can well understand as well as appreciate that how a man with so much versatility, being an expert in the field of botany, as well as wearing other crowns as well in the process, that is, being an expert in the field of physics as well as medical science. So, my dear viewers, straight away, let us hear today from our esteemed guest, because that is what we are looking forward to, hearing all sort of enlightened opinion, expression of opinion, on various issues. That is what we are going to learn today, from him. So we welcome our very, very esteemed guest today, Professor Nand Kishore Shah. And most importantly, this is the very first question I would like to press before our very, very esteemed guest for his very enlightened, reply or answer to this question. So, sir, we welcome you, Professor Sri Nand Kishore Shah, Honorable Vice Chancellor of Veer University of Ara. I welcome you on our unique and spectacular show, that is Education Pe Charcha. With this very first question, which comes to you, sir, it goes in this way. Walking down the memory lane and digging out your past, could you share some important incidents which shaped your career as a professor of botany, yet having studied advanced physics in J.N.U? Your take on this, please, sir. We welcome you on this August and spectacular show of Education.
Thank you very much, Vivekananda and your wonderful team.
it's a great opportunity for me to be live with so many bright people simultaneously. Unfortunately, the audio and video is obstructed quite frequently. Is it possible to correct it, please?
It may be the problem in your network.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Here network is stable.
Hello.
So
Yes,
you
yes.
are audible, please.
Hello.
Yes, sir, please.
Hello. Hello. Am I audible?
Now audible. Audible.
Okay. Uh, I began my career as a simple student in my village school in 1960 or so. Got my matriculation in 1971 from my village school, and then joined a college at Muzaffarpur under Bihar University. And by the time I got my inter degree, Mithila University was bifurcated from Bihar University. Later on, as a BSc honors student, I joined CM Science College, Darbhanga, where I met a number of wonderful friends, including Dr. Vidyanath Jha, Dr. Bhavnath Jha, and many other bright friends. After completing my graduation, I got an opportunity to go to J.N.U. There I joined in 1926 and studied there for MSc, MPhil, and PhD degrees for about 7-8 years. And while doing PhD, I got an offer of lectureship from Tilka Majhi Bhagalpur University, Bhagalpur, and I joined in a small college at Shekhpura. From here, I began my career as a teacher. This was a small village-like college. The college was situated at the foot of a hill, on top of which there was a temple of Mahadev. I, with my students, used to visit that temple and used to collect some plants for the purpose of identification and for possible research. While doing so, I came across a plant which was unique. If we uproot a plant and leave it for months, we expect that it will die and will never come alive again. But this plant was unique in the sense that even after months of uprooting, when we put it overnight in water, it used to turn green. That's why people used to call it by various names in this area, either by Sanjeevni or Lakshman Bhuti or Hatha Jori or Panje Mariam. This was used by the local people here for various medicinal purposes. I selected this plant and then wrote a small project to UGC. This project was sanctioned and I started a research work with some of my students in the college on this plant. This plant later on was recognized by Dr. S.S. Veer of Patiala University. He recognized it as Staginella bryopteris. This is actually a pteridophytic plant which has a character akin to plants which are found in very, very dry areas. So this plant, when it was identified, I started some medicinal properties studies. And while doing so, we found that it contains a number of excellent biochemicals. And we tried to understand why it is being used for various types of medicinal purposes. One of the purpose was to get rid of Lu, hot waves, because this area is flooded with scorching sun. It is also used for overcoming several human ailments connected to gynecology. So I kept working on this plant. Later on, I got a big project from DST also. One of the students was enrolled for PhD under me and Dr. Vivekananda. He got his degree on this plant, and this paper was published in a very good journal, Journal of Biosciences, which was the next day when this paper was out in the journal. Many journalists heard out me and they came to contact me. And Vivekananda Jhaji and my senior mentor, Dr. Syed Hasnan, where this work was done, particularly the biochemical aspect of it. And the several research, several channels, particularly Sahara, they came to my laboratory in Gwalior, where I was working as a professor and head. And there a lot of things happened. Since then, I worked on Silagina along with so many other plants. But then meanwhile, I got an opportunity under Biotechnology National Scheme, National Biotechnological Scheme, and I joined as a Biotechnology National Associate at National Institute of Immunology in Delhi. This is supposed to be one of the state-of-the-art institution in India. This was my good luck that I got a break and had an opportunity to delve into the molecular biology and genetic engineering of live organisms. There I worked on a virus and got exposed to a number of modern techniques, including cell culture, extraction of DNA, cloning of DNA, cloning of genes. So many things were learned. After some time, the government of India, led by the Department of Biotechnology, gave me a great opportunity to visit USA by its own fellowship. And in that context, I visited the University of Texas at Houston, joined MD Anderson Cancer Research for doing research on cancer cells. My mentor there was Professor B.B. Agarwal. He was a hard task master. And we used to work together very hard. I worked on different aspects of the cancer, particularly in vitro cells, particularly cells in culture. So many papers were published, but I would like to draw attention of the audience.
Sir, we'll come to it later on. Thank you.
Okay.
We'll come to it later on. Thanks a lot for digging your past and telling us about your your education right from scratch till your post-graduating from J.N.U. and your subsequent switch over to United States of America, where you worked in Houston, and you did so much work in in molecular science and all that. What you said, what you elaborated or illustrated, definitely our viewers would appreciate the overall work that you have done in USA. That is right from India, culminating in USA. Thanks a lot. I'm coming to the next very important question, sir, because I know you would appreciate we have 10 questions. So therefore, you have to be very say precise in terms of answering those questions. Coming to the very next question, very, very important, because today I have already highlighted this particular session is going to be, going to be focused on advanced physics. So it would benefit many students pursuing physics and as well as those pursuing botany and medical science. So this is a very, very enlightening and illuminating session. Therefore, I very earnestly request you, sir, that you are, of course, you personify versatility, but try to be, you come up with a very to the point response so that we can carry on with the questions. Thanks a lot. I'm coming to the next very, very important question, sir. Could you throw some light on biochemical vis-a-vis physiochemical aspects of chemical radio protection and radio sensitization in layman's parlance? Because these are very, very difficult terms. Please, your take on this.
Okay. In fact, this is the research topic that I worked on at J.N.U. Radiation, as we know, is very dangerous, particularly X-ray and gamma rays. So I used to work on gamma rays at J.N.U. Why I worked on this project is because this is the nuclear age, and we have seen the catastrophe of atom bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan. And a lot of damage were done by sound, heat, and the long-term effects were there by the X-ray and gamma rays, which came out from the exploded bombs. So we started working on how to protect the living systems, plants and animals by these injurious rays, gamma rays. We had gamma ray plant in our institution. So I worked on if we have to save our plants from destruction by these gamma rays, what to do. We did extensive work on this and found that there are several ways by which we can save plants and animals from damage by these radiations. These are called ionizing radiations. One of the ways is that we can keep these living organisms little away from oxygen, because most of the damage done by these ionizing radiation is through oxygen-dependent free radicals. If we remove many of those oxygen molecules for some time, we may save those substances. And even if there is oxygen, because without oxygen we cannot survive. So even with oxygen, what are the ways that we can protect our plants and ourselves? So we found that several compounds, particularly those containing SH, sulf-hydroxyl groups, are very good for protecting these plants against the damage induced by ionizing radiation and gamma radiations. So this is one aspect. Second aspect, I started working with the suggestion of my mentor, Professor Kishore, who was my mentor there at J.N.U. And Professor Kishore used to be the student of the legendary Professor M.S. Swaminathan. So Professor M.S. Swaminathan happens to be my great grand guru. We used to talk quite often. So these chemicals are really very, very protective. That is, the biochemical aspect of these chemicals were investigated by me on the barley plants, and we found that these radiations are able to cause damage to the DNA molecules, the synthesis of RNA molecules, the synthesis of protein molecules. And if we treat these plants with some of those chemicals, these damages are recovered to a large extent. So the biochemical aspect was studied like this, and the physicochemical aspect, as I told you, there is direct damage, which is done by the ionizing radiation directly on the genetic material or DNA. The indirect damage is done through the creation of oxygen-dependent free radicals. So in a nutshell, these are the things which engrossed my my time at J.N.U. Later on, I got the job and then went for postdoctoral studies elsewhere.
Thanks a lot, sir. So, my dear viewers, you have seen, the sir means our today's very, very esteemed guest, undertaking an extensive research in the area which has been the bastion of few people. I remember, my dear viewers, at this particular juncture, whatever little knowledge I do possess, that is very much incorporated in a famous book, world famous book, the classical of all time, autobiography of a yogi by great Paramahamsa Yogananda ji, where he spoke. He was in conversation with the famous scientist of the century from India, Jagdish Chandra Bose, and when he spoke about all the plant living on organism and all the such of explanations and illustrations about all the living organism, so definitely, actually it was a revelation for me. Today, when we have such an esteemed guest who had already undertaken such an extensive research in the same area, of living organism, so of course it has been very, very enlightening, I'm sure, for all of us. Thanks a lot, sir, for enlightening us on such a very, very crucial as well as subtle aspects and dimension of the plants and animals, upon which you have done such an extensive research. Kudos to you from this august podium of Education Pe Charcha. Coming to the very next question, sir, because we have very, very important questions, my dear viewers. Very discuss about advanced physics today. Sir, my next question comes this way. Could you kindly elaborate on the influence of dose rate and cellular peroxides on the post-irradiation modification of oxic and anoxic damage in Hordeum vulgare? Your subject in PhD. Your take on this.
Okay. As I narrated earlier, I worked on gamma radiation. Gamma radiation can be given to a live organism or any matter for this count at a definite dose rate, particularly when the gamma rays are there in the pencil cobalt 60 form. In the beginning, it gives out very high dose at a very small space of time. So that is, in 1 minute or in 1 second, lot of doses are delivered to the system. So the amount of dose which is delivered to the living system in 1 second or 1 minute is called dose rate. We realized not only the dose, but the dose rate also plays important role in studying.
It was because of some unavoidable situation, the link all of a sudden, just got snapped. I really, offer my apology. Sir, actually, third question, though you are in the midway before the connection got snapped. So I think it would be on our part to just, I'll just once again relate the question and you respond to it right from scratch. So could you kind of on the influence of, dose rate and cellular peroxides on the post-irradiation modification of oxic and anoxic in Hordeum vulgare? Your subject in PhD, please, your take on this.
Yes, there is frequent obstruction in the audio. Maybe the technical team may like.
Again, voice is not audible, sir.
Look at it. So, just narrated. The dose per minute of impact on the living system. This is what we investigated in our system during my PhD. Earlier, as we all know, that these X-rays or gamma rays are delivered to human beings and other animals at very, very small doses, dose rates, thinking that small dose rates are not very harmful. But we have found out that small dose rates may be very harmful also if it is not taken care of. And then we did extensive work on the biochemical system. Say, for example, the hydrogen peroxide was also investigated, and we found that although hydrogen peroxide is a great oxidizing agent, but if it is used in very small, minute quantity, it is very protective, particularly against the ionizing radiation-induced damages to living systems. Also, we did genetic aspect of my researches, and we found that the chromosomal damages that are done by the ionizing radiations, that can also be reversed by the radioprotective agents that we used in our system. Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, listening to you, please.
Okay. So this PhD work actually resulted into about half a dozen international publications. So many aspects of it has been published. In fact, most of the thesis is published now. If you have any specific question on these studies, I'd like to say. Otherwise, I may have to elaborate the whole PhD thesis. Perhaps that will not be in the best.
We have got so many questions. Whatever you said, I think that would suffice. As
Okay.
of now, because we have to switch over to so many other questions also.
Okay.
Of course, if you go for elaboration, it will take a lot of time. So you
Right.
already said just the exactitude of what the research was all about. Thanks a lot. And we are moving to the very next question, my dear viewers. Your take on cloning and characterization of P35 gene under HNP promoter. So this was your postdoctoral thesis. Could you please throw some light on it, please?
Yes. As a biotechnology national associate, as I said, I joined National Institute of Immunology in Delhi. This is one of the best institutions for research, advanced research in India. And my good luck that I got a break for doing research in this great institution. We selected a gene which is called P35. What is P35? It is a gene that inhibits cell death. What is cell death? In all eukaryotic systems, when the virus attacks a cell, the cell tries to get rid of the virus by killing itself. It thinks, if I kill myself, the rest of the community cells will be saved. But this smart virus, as soon as it enters the host cell, it induces this gene called P35. This gene does not allow the live cells to die. And by doing so, it is saving itself. That means viruses are so smart that they will not allow the cells to die also till their life cycle is complete. So this is a smart way of thinking by the viruses, or they have evolved this system to keep themselves surviving. I, with the help of my mentor, decided to work on this gene and try to clone it. And we tried to find out if it has some other functional aspects or not. The first functional aspect of this gene is that it stops the cell from committing suicide, so that the virus completes its life cycle. The cell wants to die. So there is a struggle between the virus and the cell. And most of the time, this virus wins, the cell survives till the virus is mature. So we cloned this cell in our system under a different promoter, which is inducible. It is called HSP, or heat shock promoter. Our idea was to see to it that this gene is activated by simple methods. For example, if we increase the temperature of a system, this gene will be activated. That's how we worked and cloned it. And then when later we realized that it is not only able to inhibit cell death, but it is also able to save the cells by indulging in anti-oxygen dependent removal. That means the oxygen effect is removed by P35 protein. We had this protein from US, and when we used it, we found that most of the free radicals were removed when this protein or this gene product was present in the system. And that's how we worked on it. This nice paper was published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, USA, which publishes the good research papers of the Nobel laureates of the whole world. So we were proud that this work got published in this wonderful journal.
Thanks a lot, sir. My dear viewers, you have seen our esteemed guest, his research work got such a huge recognition in as much as, it got published in such a reputed journal as what our guest informs us, that is a prerogative of the Nobel laureates to get all their articles and their works published. Indeed, a great honor, and we do salute you, sir, for such an extensive research, such an invaluable research that found that so much eloquently resonated with one of the topmost journals of the world. Thanks a lot for informing us about this very, very important achievement of yours. I'm just coming to the very next question, sir. This is inhibition of certain kinases by natural drugs to induce apoptosis in blood cancer cells. That is within bracket Jurkat. Now, could you explain on this, because we are laymen, we don't understand this, these technical terminologies. Even most of our viewers, would not understand. So you have to explain it in the layman's parlance. Your take on this, sir.
Okay. When I joined MD Anderson Cancer Center at the University of Texas in Houston, this was my first cell which I was exposed to. Jurkat cells are actually cultured blood cells, which are cancerous. So to start with, we started working on Jurkat cell in presence of oleandrin. Oleander is a plant with long leaf. We call it nerium also sometimes. So the sigma product from oleander was obtained. It was called oleandrin. This oleandrin was treated to these cells, and the effect was studied. We found that oleandrin is able to check the proliferation of these blood cancer cells. Not only that, it inhibits NF-kappa B, which causes inflammation to the system where it exists. Later on, we worked on other cell lines, say, for example, prostate cancer cells also. This cancer cell is especially from the male human beings. Prostate cancer is only arises in the male human beings. So this cancer cell was not responding to any drug. So my mentor gave me the task how to sensitize these cells to the drug, particularly the radiation-induced damages. We found that when we pre-treat these cells with one special kind of antibiotics, and after that, when we expose it to gamma radiation, its killing is greatly enhanced. So we got a handle of how to manage this type of cancer cells. This work also got published in a very good journal called Journal of Biochemical Chemistry, Journal of Biological Chemistry. This is also a high-profile journal. But then, one of the great things that I achieved in USA is while working on the blood cancer cells with a newly discovered drug earlier when I was a part of the team of the researchers who worked on this new drug. It was called STI 571, which was later recognized as imatinib. And then when this drug became very successful and very lucrative, one of the companies, international companies called Novartis, got a patent of it. And then this drug has been marketed by different commercial names. It is nowadays called Glivec. So Glivec is STI 571 and imatinib. All these names are of the same drug. This is a wonder drug, let me tell you. What it does is, the blood cancer cells, particularly CML, that is chronic myeloid leukemia or acute myeloid leukemic cells, they are unique in the sense that they have Philadelphia chromosome. If a person develops blood cancer, the clinicians first look for whether he has got or she has got Philadelphia chromosome or not. What is Philadelphia chromosome? This is a reciprocal translocation between two chromosomes of human beings. One is 22nd and the other is 9th. The small part of chromosome 22 is translocated to chromosome 9, and the similar part is translocated from 9 to 22. As a result, a fusion gene called BCR-ABL gene is produced. This gene synthesizes a protein called BCR-ABL protein, which is actually an enzyme. And not only enzyme, but it is a kinase. What is kinase? Kinase is an enzyme which adds or phosphorylates another protein to make it active. So this BCR-ABL kinase enzyme is the key factor in transforming a blood cell into a cancerous blood cell. So the scientists thought an idea, if we are able to inhibit the activity of BCR-ABL kinase, automatically we will be discovering a great drug. And now, how is this BCR kinase gene activated? It has to be phosphorylated. This phosphorylation is done by a molecule called ATP. It's called adenosine triphosphate, or it is also called an energy molecule. The terminal phosphate of ATP is transferred to BCR-ABL kinase and it becomes active. As soon as it becomes active, it becomes a super gene or super gene product. It immediately transforms the normal cells into cancerous cells, and it outnumbers the rest of the normal cells, and that's what we call it as blood cancer. People suffocate. Sufficient oxygen is not reachable to all the living cells, and people die a very, very difficult death. So we discovered an analog of ATP. There's a big story behind it, but I won't go into the details of it. We discovered an analog. What is an analog? It is like an ATP which fits into the pocket of BCR-ABL kinase, but it is not able to phosphorylate it. So those pockets will be jammed by this analog of ATP, which does not allow it to be activated, and that is a drug that was earlier named as STI 571, later on imatinib, and now we call it as Glivec. So I'm very fortunate to tell all of you that I was a part of this big team which worked on STI 571. It was published in good journals also. And many papers were published in USA. And after the expiry of 3.5 years in the USA, the completion of complete time in J1 visa, I decided to come back, although my family was reluctant to come along with me. But later on, we decided to come back. And since then, in 2002, we came here, and since then, we have been contributing to the university's education system in Bihar.
Well, thanks a lot, my dear viewers. You just heard our very esteemed guest, Miss, emphasizing on this very important fact that those who go to United States of America, they become reluctant to come back to their own motherland. But here is a man who chose to relinquish all sort of material happiness there, material bliss, which is which in fact is proved to be such a pivotal point for all those who go abroad to stay back there. But here is a man who's called for national duty, who beg your pardon, that he had certain duties for his own country. His patriotism was the crucial factor that was the trigger behind his returning to his own motherland. And then since then onward, as our distinguished guest says, from 2002 onward, he has been substantially contributing towards the task of nation building, especially in the field of education. We really are glad that a man of God stature, who despite having carved out a special niche for yourself in the United States of America, nevertheless chose to come back, that itself reflects the degree and the magnitude of your patriotism. Thanks a lot, sir, for all, for your choosing to come back and doing such a great work for the nation, such an altruistic work for the nation. Now I'm coming to the next question, because we have a limited time. You would appreciate the sort of revelations that you are making on our show. I am sure it would benefit thousands of researchers, thousands of aspirants for IITs, aspirants for all sorts of, aspirants who want to go into the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore, and so many other institutes. For all of them, today's very, very important revelations coming from you are really very, very important. Now I'm coming to the next question, sir. After you so comprehensively answered to my last question, you rose to the position of a Vice Chancellor of Veer University of Ara, that is, of course, in Bihar. What sort of tangible contributions, I would say, you made, or you claim to have, made, which can be construed as your legacy for the university, or legacy for the posterity?
This is indeed a great question. I won't myself judge what I did there. It is the people at large who will judge it. But when you asked me this question, I must tell you what I did in very brief. When I joined, the university was in almost turmoil. Nothing was moving. My superior, Vice Chancellor, had almost resigned, or he was in a position to resign. I was not very happy. But then when he resigned, this responsibility came upon my soldiers, and the university was indeed, the session was going behind. Teaching was suffering. Students were suffering. The examination department was not working adequately. So these challenges were in front of me immediately. Also, the post-retirement benefits of teachers and the non-teaching staff, that was also clamoring to be solved. We were summoned by Honorable Raj Bhavan quite often to solve these problems. I took them seriously and started working on these problems from day one. When I took to the students' problem of doing the best for regularizing their examination system, the Karamcharis came in my way. they went on strike. I did all possible measures to convince them that the university will work in their favor too. Whatever is due to them will be given. But so many non-academic factors sometimes work in the university system, as you all know. They kept doing their strikes. Then I decided with my colleagues that even without the Karamcharis, we will have to hold the exams. We cannot let some of these Karamcharis to ransom our students' life. We will not allow these Karamcharis to rob our students' life. They are precious. They are the future. They are future treasures of our country and of our society. So I took this decision. Many of the principals were reluctant. I convinced them, whatever you need, I will provide you. But we will go ahead with the exam at a particular date. We did that. Many people were reluctant, but God willing, with the cooperation of many good people there, I conducted exams very successfully. And after the exams were completed, the Karamcharis withdrew their strike immediately and came back. I also made them understand that the university is not meant to appease only the Karamcharis. It is for everybody. We are meant for the students and the society. We are answerable to the society. We have to take care of our future generation. So this was the message that we sent to the society. People were very happy with this action of mine. Later on, with the consent and with the cooperation of the Honorable Raj Bhavan, I was able to almost regularize the examinations system. People, particularly the students, were very happy. The unfair means were stopped to a great extent. The retirement benefits were not given to people, Karamcharis and teachers, for many years. Every week I used to call a meeting of my officers and with those Karamcharis and teachers and solve their problems. And I feel very glad to tell you that during my tenure as Vice Chancellor, I had completed more than 99%, I had solved more than 99% of the problems related to the retirement benefits of Karamcharis and students. I feel very proud and very happy saying this. Later on, another Vice Chancellor Sahab came and we all worked together. Whatever I could contribute, I contributed to the best of my knowledge and capability. And when I left that place, people were so moved that they wanted me to stay there for longer. I said, no, it's not good. After the last day of my working day, it will be illegal for me to stay over there. So the 17th May 2021 was my last day, and 18th morning, I left that place. Thanks to the people and the society of Ara, an entire Bhojpur, which contains 4 districts, Buxar, Rohtas, Kaimur, and of course, Bhojpur, all 4 districts. People were very happy. As a small human being, I don't say I must have pleased everybody. It is not possible for a human being to do so. But to the best of my knowledge, belief, and capacity, I did my best for the welfare of that university in almost all departments. Thank you for this great question.
My dear viewers, I do remember when Sir was talking about the sort of hassles that he confronted, and so amicably and skillfully he tried to resolve all those pending issues. Of course, I do recall one of the very, very esteemed guests whom we very much welcomed, whom we hosted on Education Pe Charcha, the former illustrious Chief Secretary of Gujarat, Dr. J.N.U-studied, on whose retirement I wrote a very, very, a farewell piece. He was the man, on the verge of, he did so much for Gujarat, the longest serving chief secretary of Gujarat. All his staff members virtually were in tears when the great man had retired. Man, without an ego, man sans an ego. That is the description of Dr. J.N. Singh, the former long-serving chief secretary of Gujarat. Likewise, our today's honorable guest, Professor, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Shri Nand Kishore Saji, also happens to be the man of the same genre, in as much as the contribution that he had made for the, for all the stakeholders or wherever he could make for the improvement of the university, that was very much regarded. And in fact, it crystallized when he virtually bade a goodbye to the institution. All the stakeholders virtually cried, and in fact intended him to prolong his stay to, as a vice chancellor of the university. That is indeed a rich legacy that he had left behind, not only for the stakeholders of the university, but even for the posterity to come and study there in the Veer Kunwar University of Ara. And my dear viewers, one more thing I would like to say about Veer Kunwar Singh, which becomes very, very important here. In a famous book of Sri Veer Savarkar, one of the greatest freedom fighters of this country and the father of, the nation in one way or other, Veer Savarkar ji writes in his very, very famous book, that is in India's War of Independence. It means first India's War of Independence, because of the historians acting with a malafide intention, they dubbed 1857 as a sepoy mutiny. That was indeed the distortion of the truth, which was set right by great Veer Savarkar in the book that I just mentioned, wherein he had spoken so eloquently about great Veer Kunwar Singh. The way he fought so valiantly, despite being an octogenarian, that spoke a volume about the burning sense of patriotism of great Veer Kunwar Singh, which has been so eloquently illustrated in one of the greatest books ever written to evoke the sense of in the fellow compatriots by great Veer Savarkar. Thank you, sir, for doing so much for your institution, for all the stakeholders, by leaving such a rich legacy for even for the posterity. Straightway, I'm coming to the next question, sir, because you would appreciate the time is moving fast. But of course, some delay was there because of disruption. So we'll try to compensate for the particular loss of time. Now the next question, sir, it comes to you just now. You did your first doctoral research in Department of Experimental Radiation Oncology, University of Texas, United States of America, that is MD Anderson Cancer Center, Houston, Texas. You have already spoken about it. We very much appreciate. But could you share your experience as a researcher with a foreign university and the experience that you gathered, from a foreign university, how that contrasted with our own indigenous university in J.N.U. or any other place? Your take on this? The very fundamental difference between the two universities I'm talking about, one in India, wherever it might be, and other in the United States, where you yourself said that you stood blessed by working as a researcher there. Your take on this, please.
At the outset, let me tell you that people from India are highly respected in the US, because the people who go out from India to these countries, they are well blessed with the fundamentals, very nice. And whenever some problem comes, they dig out the problem from the root and work on it and deliver the results. And that country, like US, is based on results, no matter how big or small a person is. What matters is result. So when I joined that institution, every 2 weeks used to have laboratory meeting. And in all those meetings, invariably, I used to show some new data, and my mentor, Professor Raymond E. Mine, used to be very happy with me. All the other people used to say, this time I don't have a new data to show, but fortunately, I worked hard and worked systematically to produce good, lucrative data. And back to back, we had a junior student. He was doing PhD in the same laboratory, John Kurland. He was working for the last about 3.5 years, and there was no result in his hand. I was wondering, he was an American student, and he was working in his own way. So one day, he told me that, Dr. Shah, I'm going to resign from this laboratory because I don't have any data. I don't know how to produce it. I was really moved by his words. I said, John, don't worry. Sometimes it takes time. So have patience. Something will come very nice for you. In 2-3 days, I requested him for a small favor. In fact, I wanted to involve him in my research so that he feels good, feels comfortable, and some data comes to him. So I asked him to do an experiment, which I also was capable of doing it, but I involved him. He did that work. It was on the anti-inflammatory effect of some drug. NF-kappa B is the molecule which does this job. So I asked him to perform this experiment. He did it very honestly and very nicely. But that data was not involved in his in the work that I submitted to a journal called JBC. Later on, when the paper was being written, my mentor removed his name. John is not involved in this work. Why should he be allowed to be a co-author of this? I said, John's data is not included in this paper, but he did work on this aspect. He showed that this pathway is not working. That is also a part of the investigation. My mentor immediately recognized it, and he gave him authorship. When that paper was published, Dr. Sahab, let me tell you, he was so happy to see that paper, and that became a catalyst to him. After that, he started producing excellent data, and perhaps he got his PhD also. I had come back to India, but then the impetus, the thing that I wanted him to keep him going was there in his blood after that work. I feel very happy with that student now, who was about to leave that lab, and there he continued and got his degree perhaps. So
Great. My dear viewers, you just heard, the compassion, what Buddha talked about, spoke about. Here we have got our honored guest. He had vitalized that particular compassion, even for, a foreigner. Mr. John was not related to our honored guest, but nonetheless, once listening to his grievance, listening to his, the sense of frustration, wherever he could help, he stepped in to help out, a stranger, help out a foreigner who never was related to him. So that showed, a sort of belongingness for one and all, as what great Sankara talks about, one spirit. This world is a manifestation of Brahma. Same spirit permeates the universe. Here is our honored guest who, despite being in United States of America, having had no affinity or no blood relationship with a man, but listening to his woes and sorrow, he instantly developed a close affinity and extended all sort of help that gave him all the reward that he never expected. That is the sign of compassion. Thanks a lot, sir, for a great work that you have done. You showed compassion, not for a fellow compatriot, but for a foreigner. That shows, and that is very much imprinted on your face, a face of benevolence. That is, you epitomize, some sort of benevolence or compassion that itself shows that what he wants to be a human first before he's a professional. Humanity is, is just like a shining jewel in the armor of any human being. Thanks a lot, sir. Coming to the very next question, very, very important question now. Because we are trying to say about, while illustrating the very first question, but I had stopped you there because this question is coming to you right now. So you wrote a lot of research articles. My dear viewers, if I go on naming that, it would take almost more than an hour, because that is the sort of extensive research papers that our great esteemed guest today got them published against his name in the various journals across the world. So, sir, coming to this, you got a lot of papers, and to name each one of them would not be feasible because of the time constant that you would very much appreciate. So therefore, you just have to be very just and very specific in terms of naming those research papers. But here the question goes in this way. Lot of research articles from that of susceptibility of the Bhopal methyl MIC gas tragedy to the survivors and their offspring to COVID-19. So this already fundamentally, it speaks about such a huge tons of research that you have done. So now the question comes, sir, if you could share in a very concise way, because of the time constant, as to these research papers with our viewers and those who made a landmark contribution. Your take on this.
I also contributed my services as a professor and head of the Department of Biotechnology at MIT's Gwalior and at the School of Biotechnology at Rajiv Gandhi Technological University, Bhopal. While working there, I came in contact with the scientists of Jawaharlal Nehru Cancer Institute in Bhopal. One of the students working there was doing his work on the MIC gas. That was a tragic story which killed more than 3,000 people. This student was trying to understand those who were killed, they were killed, but the survivors, is their life okay? Is there people who were born from these exposed people, MIC exposed people, are they okay? He did various aspects of studies on the genetic effects of MIC on these survivors. And we came out with very tantalizing conclusions that these people are still under the threat, genetic damage threat by MIC. Their kids, their offsprings are still suffering to some extent. And once these researches are done, people also start thinking about how to save these people and the next generation from these evil effects of MIC. This was a very good work done by my student called Senthil and Dr. Ganesh. We did very good collaborative work. And still that student and the researcher, Dr. Ganesh, is in contact with me. We had recently published a paper on how these people fare during the corona pandemic. And we have come out with a conclusion that corona pandemic has badly impacted those people who survived MIC. This paper has very recently been published. I'm very, very thankful to those bright students and the bright colleague at Jawaharlal Nehru Cancer Institute in Bhopal. Thank you, sir, for this good question.
To have thrown adequate light on it, sir. We have got two questions. Time is very short. I would like you to be very brief on these two questions, because I wouldn't like any questions to be left alone, not to put before you. So two questions I have got, and I would request you honestly to be as brief as possible. So next question goes very simple. You claim to have received 4-week extensive training in electron microscopy at All India Institute of Medical Science, New Delhi. Could you explain to our viewers on the same what exactly it is?
Yeah, I was a a research student at J.N.U., and there I got an opportunity to be enrolled as a trainee in electron microscopy at All India Institute of Medical Sciences. That was a great experience for me. We used to work theoretically about electron microscope. We had not seen it by then. After joining that training, I was in contact with a professor of BHU who actually taught us the physics behind electron microscopy. And I feel very glad to tell you, had I been a student of that professor, I would have been a physicist at the same moment. He was such a great teacher of physics. Then I learned the theoretical aspect, and also I learned the practical aspect of how to produce good data, good photographs in the electron microscope in that 4 weeks training. That was a very rewarding time for me. And that was also a period when I was doing PhD. So that was very good time for me. It enlightened me, and still I feel wonderful about that training program and what I extracted from that training. Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot, sir. And now I'm coming to the last question, my dear viewers. It has been such an illuminating program, with such a great man, having such a versatility, which is, epitomizing and personifying, that I'm sure, we all have been benefited a lot. Sir, my last question goes to you. You are also attended and presented papers in over 20 national and international congress, conferences, symposia, and workshops, including international conferences in Edinburgh, United Kingdom, New Orleans, United States of America, San Francisco, again United States of America. If you could tell us about your, those papers, emphasizing upon your work in Edinburgh as well as in St. Orleans and San Francisco. That would be, because national seminars is well and good, but international would enlighten our viewers as to what are the modus operandi, especially concerning the international seminars, symposia, and conferences. Your take on this, sir.
Edinburgh is the capital of Scotland, and I was very thrilled to visit that great city. The 8th International Congress of Radiation Research was convened there, and I was a part of it. Even my mentor, Professor P.C. Keswan, Professor P.N. Srivastava, were all present in that wonderful conference. There I presented my data. It was in 1987, perhaps. It was very enjoyable. The conference is not only sharing my data with the international scientists, but also knowing what the people elsewhere in the world are doing in the same field. I interacted with many people and got enlightened in my area about many new things that otherwise I would have been left behind. So that was very rewarding. I came back enlightened and wrote several projects. Then in New Orleans, I visited New Orleans in USA, while in America itself. I visited San Francisco also. As I told you, the blood cancer research on STI was presented in the San Francisco conference. It was very rewarding and very good for me. For any youngster, I would say that you must visit these conferences, and at least one objective you should target, that I must get this objective from this conference. I feel very glad to tell you that my mentor, Professor Raymond Mine, used to tell me, you must visit those conferences. All the expenses will be mine. Don't worry about expenses, but you must visit that conference and come out with great innovative ideas. So they are the Americans. They only die for great new innovative ideas. I went there, came back, and started working in his laboratory with greater enthusiasm. That's what a conference gives a researcher.
Great, sir. Thanks a lot, my dear viewers. You heard United States is a land of idea, innovation, and the sense of innovativeness is what is being celebrated by the intelligentsia class in America. As sir was very, very forthright in terms of, illustrating on this, his participation in a very, very important conference in Edinburgh. Of course, the such of the information and the intellectual horizon that got broadened on account of his participation in such seminar, in such international conference, and that too, such an encouragement coming from seniors. We hardly have such spectacle or such scenario here in our country, where seniors are not that large-hearted people. I am talking about most of the situations. Of course, exceptions are always there. So we, my dear viewers, you have heard today our spectacular program where we have invited one of the topmost educationists of this country, who left such a lucrative opportunity in the United States to come back to India to serve the nation, and with such a burning zeal of patriotism. We salute our professor, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Shri, means our Shah Sahab. We salute him, Shri Nand Kishore Shah Sahab, for all his very, very illuminating words. My dear viewers, before I pass on to Dr. Shri Surendra Pathak, I would like to make some rectification here. Dr. Shri Surendra Pathak ji, basically, actually, he is an adjunct professor of Vidyapeeth.
No, thank you. Hello. Hello. I would just like to get 1 minute.
Please.
At the end of this great meeting, let me thank you, the organizers, particularly Professor Pathak Sahab, Jha Sahab, and all your wonderful team. And before going out, let me thank the Almighty, my family members, and the great legendary Dr. Lakshman Jha, the spiritual leader who actually transformed my life. He showed me the mission of life that made the other things very easier for me to go ahead. Dr. Arun Kumar Mishra, who is now settled in the USA. And then I got a godly man called Dr. Vivekananda. He is the man instrumental in sending me to the J.N.U. Otherwise, I wasn't prepared. So he is great. I cannot forget him throughout my life, and maybe in my next life also. Then another person who contributed greatly to my career is Dr. Syed Ehtisham Hasnan at J.N.U. He has been the Vice Chancellor of Central University at Hyderabad and presently the Vice Chancellor of Hamdard in Delhi. He showed me not only how to write research papers, but also how to do research, how to work hard. So my thanks are also due to this great man and all my colleagues who contributed in my career. Thanks a lot for this great opportunity.
So you heard such a great words coming from our esteemed guest, because he is thanking almost all the stakeholders who contributed in whatsoever ways they could, for his progression at the higher excellence of, educational paradigm. My dear viewers, as I was saying before, our honored guest intended to, to interject. So I would like to share a few of his. With us. Actually, I was just saying that our very, very, esteemed partner, valued partner of the show, Professor Dr. Surendra Pathak is an adjunct professor of Vidyapeeth, which was founded by Mahatma Gandhi. So therefore, time and time again, I keep on calling that he is from Mahatma Gandhi University. Actually, it is from Vidyapeeth. But since Mahatma Gandhi was the founder, so I call it as, I am just calling it as Mahatma Gandhi, but originally it is Vidyapeeth. My dear viewers, before I pass it on to Professor Dr. Surendra Pathak to sum up the gist of our conversation, to our next guest on 28th, that is Professor Pinaki Ranjan Bhattacharya, who happened to be my boyhood friend, is from Kolkata. Also a marketing expert, because my dear viewers, we already hosted one of the world's greatest marketing professors, Deepak Jain Sahab is the only Indian to have been a dean in America, dean in Europe, and dean in Asia. We already had the privilege of hosting him. Now, the second marketing professor we are going to host. No, he is my boyhood friend on 28th. Now I pass it on to Dr. Surendra Pathak. Sir, your take on this, please.
नमस्कार डॉक्टर नंद किशोर शाह जी।
नमस्कार सर।
मैंने आपकी बात सुनी और विवेकानंद झा जी ने बहुत ही अच्छे तरीके से आपके पर्सनैलिटी के वो सभी हिस्से को प्रश्न के माध्यम से उभारने का प्रयास किया। एक ग्रामीण पृष्ठभूमि से निकलकर राष्ट्रीय अंतर्राष्ट्रीय क्षितिज पे और अकादमिक जगत में अपनी एक अच्छे एकेडमिशियन और रिसर्चर के रूप में अपनी प्रतिष्ठा को स्थापित करना और अपने क्षेत्र सहित भारत के मान सम्मान को जो है प्रतिष्ठित करने का काम जो है आपके माध्यम से हुआ है। मुझे सबसे अच्छी बात जो आपने अंत में ग्रेटिट्यूड अपनी फैमिली और अपने आपको जो सहयोग करने वाले जो आपके सीनियर प्रोफेसर रहे हैं उनके प्रति व्यक्त किया, उससे आपके मानवीय पक्ष का पता लगता है और एक प्रकार की आपके व्यक्तित्व की जो ईमानदारी है वो इससे झलकती है। इससे बहुत ही अच्छा लगा। आज जबकि न्यूक्लियर थ्रेट का समय है, हमको ये समझ में भी नहीं आता है कि रेडिएशन कहाँ कहाँ और किन किन तरीके से हो रहा है, और ऐसे समय में आपने आज से कुछ वर्ष पूर्व रेडिएशन के इफेक्ट को लेकर और उसके कारण से कैंसर के ऊपर जो रिसर्च हो रही है उसमें आपकी रिसर्च का एक बड़ा कंट्रीब्यूशन रहा है। इस दृष्टिकोण से आपका जो रिसर्च है वो मानव जाति के लिए बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण और आगे इस पे काम करने के लिए दूसरों को प्रेरित करने वाला है। और मुझे लगता है कि आने वाला जो समय है वो बहुत ही भयानक है मानव जाति के लिए, और उसमें हम लोग कल्पना भी नहीं कर पा रहे हैं कि किस तरीके के ट्रेंड्स जो हैं वो आ सकते हैं। आप यूक्रेन वार की न्यूज़ हम लोग रोज सुनते हैं और न्यूक्लियर थ्रेट जो है वो सुनने को मिलती है। लोगों को ये अनुमान भी नहीं लग पा रहा है कि किस दिन जो है हम टेलीविजन खोलेंगे और पता लगेगा कि न्यूक्लियर बम जो है पटक दिया। हिरोशिमा और नागासाकी की रिसर्च से आपने इंस्पायर होके बहुत सारा काम किया है, लेकिन इसके बावजूद भी लगता नहीं है कि मानव जाति ने कुछ सीखा है। और मुझे लगता है कि आपका जो रिसर्च है वो इस क्षेत्र में अवेयरनेस का काम करेगा और मानव जाति को बचाने के काम में उपयोगी साबित होगा। मैं आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद व्यक्त करना चाहता हूं कि आप विवेकानंद झा के एजुकेशन पे चर्चा कार्यक्रम में शामिल हुए, और आप जैसे लोगों की जो ट्रू सेंस में प्रोफेसर हैं, ऐसे लोगों की बहुत आवश्यकता है हमारे भारतीय जो अकादमिक क्षेत्र है उसमें भी। और आपने एक बहुत अच्छी बात ये भी बताई कि अमेरिका में भारतीयों का और खासकर जो इंडियन रिसर्चर्स हैं उनका बहुत रिस्पेक्ट है। लोग भयभीत रहते हैं, लेकिन मुझे लगता है कि जो भारतीयों में कठोर परिश्रम करने की प्रवृत्ति है और ऑनेस्टी के साथ काम करने की जो प्रवृत्ति है उसके कारण से भारत का रिस्पेक्ट आप जैसे लोगों के माध्यम से ही अमेरिकन समाज में बड़ा होगा, ऐसा मैं विश्वास कर सकता हूं। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, फिर मिलेंगे सर।
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot, Professor Dr. Surendra Pathak ji, for such invaluable words. He summed up so beautifully. And of course, we are passing through a very terrible crisis because we all know the ongoing war in Ukraine, where it will end up. Again, Chinese, invasion or Chinese planning to invade Taiwan and Tokyo, Japan. So what all these are really matter of terrible concern for all of us. But amidst such a glooming scenario, there is some sort of hope and optimism, like today's honored guest of ours, who is encouraging the students community to go for research, because there is a blind pursuit of in such careers, in administration like IS and all that, and where our country is languishing at the bottom of the social pyramid, you can say, or bottom of the thought process. We don't think in terms of going for research, which America has been so much encouraging, and that is why people are going for the greener pasture in quest for the better opportunities which America is providing on a platter, and we are simply failing to showcase. So here is a man, our distinguished guest, who is trying to shatter that particular myth in as much as he is delivering a straight message to all of us that go for research, because that will give you all sort of contentment, not only in terms of the enrichment of knowledge, but even in terms of leaving a rich legacy behind for the posterity to relish and cherish. So today's honored guest of ours has left a very, very rich legacy for the posterity to cherish. So with this, I thank from the core of my heart to our esteemed guest, Professor Nand Kishore Saji, our valued partner, Professor Dr. Surendra Pathak ji, and of course Sabya Pathak ji and Mr. Chandra Rao for all sort of valuable contribution for making Education Pe Charcha a successful program, because Education Pe Charcha is equivalent to educating the nation. Thanks to all of you for gracing and blessing our Education Pe Charcha. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Nand Kishore ji, our valued guest, Dr. Surendra Pathak ji.